जी हाँ, तो आप अभी इंटरव्यू देख रहे थे फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर का और डेप्यूटी फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर दोनों का। फिलहाल काफी दिलचस्प इंटरव्यू था जिसमें कि एक पूरा पैनल था जो सवालों की बौछार उनके ऊपर कर रहा था। ये भी देखना होगा कि संसद भवन के बाहर जिस तरह के सवाल आए हैं उसका जवाब किस तरह से दिया है, तो ये भी देखना महत्वपूर्ण है क्योंकि बहुत सारी चीजें छनकर इस इंटरव्यू के जरिए भी हमारे सामने आई हैं। मुंबई से हम एक बार फिर हाजिर हैं, आरएस टीवी की टीम आपके साथ एक बार, और हम कई चीजें देखने की कोशिश करेंगे, डिकोड करने की कोशिश करेंगे कि कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर के लिए, आम आदमी के लिए और अलग अलग जो समूह हैं जो अपने हिसाब से इस बजट को देख रहे थे, क्या कुछ उनको मिला है और कितनी ऐसी चीजें हैं जिसमें निराशा हाथ लगी है। हालांकि कहा यह जाता है कि बजट को संसद भवन के बाहर समझने में भी कई घंटे का वक्त लगता है और शायद इसलिए हम यहां पर मौजूद हैं। कुछ खास मेहमानों के जरिए इसको समझने की कोशिश करेंगे कि किसको क्या कुछ हासिल हुआ है और खासकर देश की जो अर्थव्यवस्था है उसके लिए किस तरह का रोड मैप इसमें नजर आ रहा है, संकेत किस तरह के हैं। मेरे साथी गोविंद भी मौजूद हैं।
Thank you, Arva. So let's begin. I think what we are trying to understand is first, what was the message or what is the one directional message that we are taking away, and then we'll get down to some of the more specifics, individual corporate tax and so on and so forth. Shailesh?
The message is that you should be proud to be an Indian.
Okay.
In a country which has the second best performing capital market in the world, the highest growth rate in the world, inflation at a moderate level of 5%, and a propensity to grow at a rate which will be double digit in no more than 2 years.
And so you're saying that the preconditions for all of this is already there?
Already there.
The
there were great macros, there was great good feeling amongst people. It's an inspiring and inspired budget, is how I would like
Let
to
me get some approval.
I think he has laid down all the points on a platter which will actually skyrocket this economy if we can execute and implement it properly to a double-digit growth rate that we are all expecting.
Give me one or two instances you felt are good instances which you can,
I think I will not go into the corporates and other things. I think the first thing that he has done extremely well is to handle the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit target, which he has actually taken a little extra time, which is following 4.1% to 3.9% to 3.5% and to 3% is very, very acceptable budget. And he is already doing very well on the divestment side of it, and I think that will be absolutely achievable. And with the amendment of the FRBM Act, we will be under the right level. That is number one.
Yeah.
And number two is that his emphasis on infrastructure is absolutely most commendable. The way he has committed about 2 lakh crore on spending of infrastructure over a period of time, that is the only thing that is lacking in our economy, and that 2 lakh crore spending, if properly done, whether it's private or public or overseas money, that is something which has to lay down the growth rate of this economy for the next 5 to 7 years.
So I'm going to come to capital markets in a second, Ved Prakash Chaturvedi. Devopam, what are the macro signals you picked up from this?
So in my opinion, this was an honest and ordinary budget. Thankfully, there was no populist measures, and thankfully it didn't have any big bang reforms as was being anticipated earlier. So the macroeconomy is definitely on a sound path now. That is something what Mr. Arun Jaitley also acknowledged at the beginning of the budget, and the economic survey did paint yesterday. So I feel the fiscal deficit targets that has been given, and very honestly he had asked for one additional year in order to meet the fiscal deficit targets, which was really transparent on his side, is pretty attainable. The economy can definitely attain a double-digit growth rate over the next 3 years, given the type of macro fundamentals we are already seeing on the streets. Sentiment is high, and it is common knowledge that always sentiment is the first mover to a macro recovery.
Right. So if we were to ask that question about growth, investment, and jobs, you're saying that the growth part is taken care of by this budget, or at least what we heard today.
Prospects of a definite growth has been taken care of because we are already in a recovery phase, and Indian governments, too, interestingly, are always criticized that whenever the economy starts or embarks on a recovery phase, they start cutting down expenditures in order to cut down fiscal deficits and all that. So what happens is the path to growth becomes elongated.
Right.
This time Arun Jaitley did sound that he is not really much bothered about the fiscal deficit. He is okay to let the fiscal deficit target to slip from 3.6 to 3.9, or the revenue deficit slip from 2.6 to 2.8, but he is more focused on...
And more importantly, from what I hear, is that you're saying that the government seems to be in control.
Government seems very much in control by investing in sectors which has a high multiplier effect.
Okay. Ved, how do you see it? A lot of things for the financial services sector as a whole.
So I think that this budget reflects the political mandate of the government, and the fact that if you just go back and think about the political mandate is that we don't want freebies. We want to be empowered. We want to be empowered to find jobs. We want to be empowered to learn, skill ourselves, and so on and so forth. So already, if you look at the budget, there's there's accident insurance, there's financial inclusion, like you mentioned, etc. So the level of insecurity that individuals has comes down. You are insured. You have some amount of access to financial, and there's enormous amount of investment into skill development and make in India. So what I'm saying is that give me a job, I'll skill myself, make me secure, and I'll make my own path.
Yes, the markets have not reacted very favorably. I mean, of course, they're going wildly up and down during the session, but after that, they seem to have reacted negatively.
So I think, in a lighter vein, the challenge that is there with the finance minister and the markets is a bit like the Indian cricket team, right? That there's so much of expectation before you go into a one-day match that it is very difficult.
आपने जिक्र किया कि किस तरह से जो इंक्लूसिविटी की बात की गई है, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ की बात की गई है, और खासकर ये सरकार जिस प्लान पे आई है वापस, उसमें ये भी है कि जो एक जॉब क्रिएशन की बात है, बल्कि जॉब रिवोल्यूशन की बात हो रही है कि इस हद तक नौकरियां बढ़ाई जाएंगी. बजट में ऐसे कौन से पॉइंट्स हैं जिसमें आपको ये लगता है कि वो रिवोल्यूशन हो पाएगा जिसका जिक्र पीएम मोदी करते रहे हैं?
तो मेरे ख्याल से मैं 4 चीजों का जिक्र करना चाहूंगा. एक तो जो उन्होंने JAM बोला है, जैम बोला है कि जन धन, आधार और मोबाइल, इन सब का मिला जुला असर होगा. और इसको आप अगर DBT के साथ देखें तो इसका असर ये होगा कि एक बड़ी जो संख्या में हमारी जो जनता है वो फाइनेंशियल क्षेत्र में आएगी, उनको सिक्योरिटी मिलेगी क्योंकि इंश्योरेंस मिलेगा, और वो हमारी सरकार के साथ सीधे जुड़ जाएंगे. और साथ में ही उन्होंने प्लग एंड प्ले की बात करी है. उन्होंने, जैसा कि बात हुई पहले, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करी है. तो इस सबका मिला जुला असर ये होगा कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप होगा और इसके साथ ही कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर जो है वो डेवलप होगा, जॉब्स क्रिएट होंगे, और जो एम्पावर्ड लोग हैं वो खुद को स्किल कर पाएंगे और इन जॉब्स के लिए अपने आप को प्रस्तुत कर पाएंगे.
प्रफुल्ल बनर्जी, बात ये हो रही है कि किस तरह से ये सरकार, बार बार मुकाबला जाहिर होता ही रहेगा कि यूपीए ने क्या किया और एनडीए अब क्या करना चाहता है. बहुत पुरानी भी नहीं हुई है अभी सरकार. अगर हम जैम का भी जिक्र करें तो उसमें भी जो तीनों स्कीमों का हम जिक्र कर रहे हैं, JA और M, बहुत कुछ ये भी यूपीए मॉडल पर ही है. तो ऐसा क्या है जो यूपीए में काम नहीं किया और इस जैम से हमें इतनी उम्मीद हो रही है, ये ट्रिनिटी जो है तीन वाक्यों की?
मेरा ख्याल यह है कि आई थिंक all the government try their best. I am not here to compare the governments, but best part would be that this government, whatever they are doing, they are trying to execute. They will have to be given more time. It is only 9 months that they have come in power. We have given other governments 10 years, if not 60 years. And I think we need to give this government much more than what we have given today and see how they perform. The execution and implementation of all these schemes that they talked about is the main key thing for taking us to that growth path, and I think it will be done very well.
लेकिन प्रबल, अभी वित्त मंत्री ने ये भी कहा कि ये बड़ी खोखली सी एक डिबेट है कि कहा जाता है या तो आप कॉर्पोरेट की तरफ हैं या आप गरीबों की तरफ हैं. क्या आप ये मानते हैं कि वाकई ये ऐसी डिबेट है जहां आपको एक तरफ खड़े होना है, सरकार को खासकर?
मेरा ख्याल ये है कि ये कॉर्पोरेट के लिए नहीं है. दिस इज एक्चुअली फॉर all the people who are involved with the growth of the economy. And let me explain what I am trying to say. If you look at the whole spectrum, there was one issue of federal government that was always facing this government, central government. He has actually gone and given 62% of the central government's resources being distributed to the state government. That itself will actually ensure that a lot of the resources at the command of the central government will actually reach the state government, and from the state government we expect that it will reach the poor and common level of the people. If you look at the all other steps that he has taken, he has talked about the students, he has talked about the disabled, he has talked about the women, he has talked about the senior most people, and have provided for everything.
लेकिन ये सेगमेंट्स हमेशा ही होते हैं बजट में.
No, होता है, but आप ये देखिए that what he is trying to do, that's why I am actually emphasizing on execution, that if he can execute all these points that he has made, we will be a different economy 3 year, 5 year down the
line. लेकिन आप
line.
इसमें इफ लगाना चाहते हैं, यानी कि हम कहने की कोशिश में ये कर रही हूँ कि जो एग्जीक्यूशन का आप पार्ट कह रहे हैं, तो क्या आप ये कह रहे हैं कि ब्यूरोक्रेसी कुछ अलग तरीके से काम करेगी इस सरकार में?
I won't say that. You are asking me a little loaded question. I would like to address it like this. I would say the execution is always a challenging thing in any sphere of the world.
आप उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि एग्जीक्यूशन
हम उम्मीद कर रहा है कि execution होगा, because in a number of cases, not only in India, globally, we actually fail on our mission because the policies, theories, strategies are all good, but we don't implement and execute it.
So, what about corporate tax? I mean, you're the big corporate in this group here. How do you see that, the reduction from 30 to 25%?
I see that that's a right step. but I do not see that actually being the incentive to go ahead and invest lot more money.
You see taxes actually going up because if the exemptions also go and things could get balanced out?
This depends. If the exemption go, and particularly you need to analyze it after seeing the fine print. This is a very valid question. If the exemptions go away in relation to the investments, then it will can have a negative impact. The exemption can go where the company is making tremendous amount of profit and is also enjoying. In that case, exemption can go. But if it is, these exemptions are related to investment, then it will be counterproductive.
Shailesh, how do you see that? No, I mean the finance minister did juxtapose this, right? He talked about a surcharge on personal tax and...
the important point he made is that the effective tax rate is 23% today. So he was not promising a reduction. There was overjoy when 30 was thought to be brought down to 25. But what he said is that we want to eliminate all the distractions from the tax code and over a period of 4 years bring down the rate to 25%. Next year, actually the tax rate will go up because the 30% rate stays and the surcharge will kick in to raise the tax outflow. Even when it touches 25 after 4 years, if the effective tax rate today is 23 and the effective tax rate then becomes 25, that's actually a larger collection.
Okay, so let me ask you the other quick tax question, which is really to do with the surcharge, right? So removal of wealth tax on one hand and imposition of 2% additional surcharge on high net worth individuals. The argument seems to be good, like 1,000 crore give up, 9,000 crore.
I thought it was a superbly done thing. It speaks to the promise of simplicity, predictability, stability in tax laws. This wealth tax was an anachronism. To collect 1,008 crores and have a whole tax machinery dedicated to it was absurd.
आप जो है इस बजट से काफी प्रभावित नजर आ रहे हैं, चारों पैनलिस्ट में आप ज्यादा इम्प्रेस्ड हैं। ये बताइए फिलहाल की बार बार जो हमने सुना है ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस की बात करते रहे पीएम मोदी, आज अरुण जेटली साहब भी इस बात को कह रहे थे। ऐसी कौन सी चीजें आपको नजर आई हैं इस बजट में, खासकर अगर इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पार्ट को थोड़ा फ्यूचर के लिए भी रख दें तब भी, कि जिससे ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस जो है वो बेहतर हो जाएगा? क्योंकि पिछले दिनों में जो रिकॉर्ड हमारे सामने आया है उससे भारत और नीचे गिरा है इस स्थान में।
मैं ये समझता हूं कि ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस आएगी। क्यों? उन्होंने कहा अपनी बजट स्पीच में कि उन्होंने एक ई बिज प्लेटफॉर्म बना दिया है जिसमें कि जो 14 तरह की जो परमिशंस लगती है एक बिजनेस को चालू करने में, उन सबको एकत्रित करके एक ही परमिशन मिल जाएगी इंस्टेंटली। इससे ज्यादा ईज ऑफ बिजनेस क्या हो सकती है? दूसरी बात कि जो भी पेमेंट्स हैं अपनी इकोनॉमी में वो सब कैश नहीं, डायरेक्ट ट्रांसफर बैंक की पेमेंट सिस्टम से होने लगेगी। डिस्प्यूट रेजोल्यूशन के लिए बहुत उन्होंने बोला है। तो ये सब मिल मिला के ईज ऑफ बिजनेस
बनता है।
He also talked about disincentivizing cash and incentivizing credit and debit card payments, which is also significant.
Absolutely. I add one more point to what Shailesh said. I think Shailesh made a very valid point. The other additional point that the finance minister said very clearly is that while all those 14 approvals and everything can be converted into one, but the business can start pending that approval, and that approval can be done post facto. That is the major important step in that will help us doing in
creating the enabling frame.
लेकिन दीपक जी बताइए कि फिलहाल लैंड एक्विजिशन को लेकर जिस तरह की बहस है, जब ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस की हम बात करें तो सबसे पहले जमीन लेना ही कितना मुश्किल है भारत में। फिलहाल ये जो ऑर्डिनेंस है उसको एक्ट बनाने के लिए कितनी सरकार को मुश्किलें झेलनी पड़ रही हैं, आपको इस बात का अंदाजा है? क्या बिना लैंड एक्विजिशन की मुश्किल को हल किए ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस को पार किया जा सकता है?
बिल्कुल नहीं, लैंड एक्विजिशन एक इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट रह जाता है, लेकिन ईज ऑफ मेकिंग बिजनेस और डूइंग बिजनेस अकेला एक सेंटर का टॉपिक नहीं है। इट इज द सब्जेक्ट ऑफ द स्टेट्स ऑल्सो। सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल जैसे देवेंद्र फडणवीस की सरकार आई थी महाराष्ट्र में, द फर्स्ट थिंग दे डिड वाज दे रिड्यूस द नंबर ऑफ लाइसेंसेज रिक्वायर्ड टू सेट अप अ न्यू फैक्ट्री इन महाराष्ट्र फ्रॉम 75 to 22. सो ऐसे प्रोएक्टिव अगर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स भी होने लगे तो एट ओवरऑल बेसिस और एट द पैन इंडिया लेवल डेफिनेटली ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस विल बिकम मच बेटर।
लेकिन दीपक में इसमें जो राजनीतिक मजबूरी है वो ये भी है कि अगर बहुत ज्यादा आसान हो जाता है तो शायद ये भी मुश्किल की बात है कि जो चेक एंड बैलेंसेस होने चाहिए, चाहे वो घरेलू इन्वेस्टर्स की बात हो, घरेलू कंपनियों की बात करें या विदेशी कंपनियों की बात करें, तो शायद सरकार को वो अपना एक जो वक्त लेना चाहिए बराबर प्रॉपर चेक एंड बैलेंसेस के लिए, वो तो मिलना ही चाहिए।
जी, अब अभी महाराष्ट्र के एग्जांपल आप ले लीजिए. महाराष्ट्र में सफिशिएंट चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस हैं. द स्टेट इज थ्राइविंग. इट इज वन ऑफ द टॉप 3 states in the country, and despite and even then we have a very easy licensing policy in Maharashtra compared to something like a West Bengal or maybe a Madhya Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh. तो अगर
आप ये कह रहे हैं कि इनएफिशिएंसी को इससे न तोला जाए कि शायद सरकार जो है बहुत जस्टिफाइड होने की कोशिश कर रही है या एक न्यायपूर्ण सरकार बनने की कोशिश कर रही है. इनएफिशिएंसी अलग चीज है और जस्ट सरकार होना अलग चीज है.
एक और प्रोविजन आ रहा है जिससे ये जो आपका जो भय है वो बिल्कुल निकल जाएगा कि प्रायर टू स्टार्टिंग द बिजनेस एक फ्रेमवर्क बनाया जाएगा कि अगर आप उस फ्रेमवर्क के तहत बिजनेस करना चाहते हैं तो आपको परमिशन की जरूरत क्या है. परमिशन से क्या होता है कि आप फ्रेमवर्क में बैठ जाएं. अगर फ्रेमवर्क ही साफ और क्लियर हो तो फिर आपको परमिशन की जरूरत.
शैलेश जी, कहीं ना कहीं देखिए, कॉर्पोरेट इंडिया को जाहिर है फेवर करना चाहती है सरकार, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी उनसे एक दूरी बना के रखना भी सरकार की मजबूरी है.
कॉमन हैंड से बात कर रहे हैं. मैं समझता हूं कि जो कॉमन मैन के लिए इस बजट में प्रोविजंस है वो मैंने पहले किसी भी बजट में नहीं देखा. डायरेक्टली पैसा लोगों के हाथ में पहुंचेगा. डायरेक्टली लोगों को ये मैसेज दिया जा रहा है कि आप अपनी दूर की सोचिए. जब आप कमाते नहीं होंगे तब क्या होगा. पेंशन पे जो 1 लाख रुपया बढ़ावा किया है ईपीएफओ और एनपीएस में, वो एक गेम चेंजिंग आइडिया है. क्योंकि इंडिया में सबसे पुअर क्वालिटी ऑफ पेंशन कवरेज है पूरी दुनिया में. जो बड़ी इकोनॉमीज हैं उनमें सब में हम देख लें.
अब बिहार और बंगाल का हम जिक्र कर रहे हैं, थोड़ी सी राजनीति में ले आते हैं इस बहस में कि बिहार और बंगाल पे इतना प्यार क्यों आया है इस बार.
No, I think I would not try and find out any political motive in this. I think there is no doubt that Bihar and Bengal today is part of the, all said and done, is a downtrodden part of the states, and we need some incentive over there. And I think they are trying to do that very rightly so that.
लेकिन चुनाव भी जल्दी होने वाले हैं दोनों.
That is incidental. Question is that, please understand, Chunav is with the common people. And if you look at that budget, the people, common people, they will perceive in this budget that there is nothing much done in this budget for the common people. Please understand this. Why? Because what is our expectation of common people in the budget? That there will be relaxation on salary taxation, there will be concessions on home loan interest rate and repayment further, and there will be relaxation on auto loan. Nothing is there over here. And so that is why you will find that there is, the market has actually given a negative trend of just after the budget was completed. One portion is that obviously we have not read the fine print as of today, it is yet to come. But the question is that people actually will misconstrue this budget as it is not catering to those preconceived demands or notions or expectations of the common people.
Right.
But the long-term effect of this budget is much wider and much more positive.
Okay, wait, a couple of points now, just to return to the financial part of the world. One is the gold bonds. I mean, you know, you can sort of, the whole objective of monetizing or the attempt to move people away from physical gold to, you know, more virtual gold, so to speak.
Correct.
Do you see that solving this fundamental problem, right? Because finally, to achieve these larger targets of investment and growth, we need more savings coming into the markets. Is gold going to do that? And broadly, are you seeing other sort of signals from this budget which you think will revitalize the whole savings economy?
So I think specifically in the area of financial services, there are 3 or 4 things that have been done. One is, like you mentioned, monetization of gold. I think it's a step, and I think we have to wait and watch. Indians love gold, Indians love physical gold, and so we really have to see how much of that gets monetized. I think, but there are a couple of other areas which possibly one should speak about. The pass-through status that REITs have been given. I think housing and ownership of real estate is another one big area where savings are at the moment locked in. So I think that is something that can become very, very exciting. The infrastructure fund that they've spoken about and the sovereign support to risk, if you look at it, composite whole for infra is an important idea. And some of the other stuff that they have done, for example, making the permanent establishment structure more transparent, ensuring that everything is done.
Infrastructure fund specifically, do you feel that was really the problem? As in, we've also announced infrastructure funds in the past, haven't we?
I think, but there has been some specific allocation and so on and so forth. So, the point was made about execution. So the hope is and the expectation is that there would be far more focus on execution, getting it off the ground and moving. And as I mentioned earlier, I think in this budget there has been a lot more talk about we are going to be enablers come forward and take the benefit of this enabling environment that we are creating. So I'm sure even in this infrastructure fund, maybe there will be a lot more participation of multilateral sort of multifarious institutions.
शायद ये बात भी कही गई कि जॉब सीकर के बजाय जॉब क्रिएटर बना जाएगा।
जी, जी, जी।
तो ये सुनने में तो अच्छा लग रहा है, लेकिन किस तरह से जॉब सीकर जॉब क्रिएटर बनेगा?
जैसे मैंने कि पहले भी कहा कि
I just add to that, the number of times the finance minister used the word startups, I've not heard any finance minister or budget use that. I mean, it's such a new generation word.
जी जी। तो मैं वही, जैसे कि मैंने पहले भी कहा, एम्पावरमेंट थीम है कि भाई हम एम्पावर करना चाहते हैं। एक जैसा कि पहले बात की गई है कि स्टेट्स को ज्यादा डेवलपमेंट हुआ है, वेंचर कैपिटल फंड्स चालू करने की बात हो रही है, माइक्रो फाइनेंस को सपोर्ट करने की बात हो रही है। तो अब आप एक साधारण मानस के आप अपने उनको इश्यूज में अगर रखें तो मुझे सिक्योरिटी दी जा रही है, मेरे पास बैंक अकाउंट है, मुझे इंश्योरेंस दे दिया गया है, मुझे स्किल डेवलपमेंट का फोकस है, मैं अपने आप को स्किल कर पा रहा हूं, मुझे फाइनेंस सपोर्ट है, माइक्रो फाइनेंस सपोर्ट है कि मैं छोटे छोटे बिजनेस चालू कर सकता हूं, और साथ में ही प्लग एंड प्ले है कि मुझे गवर्नमेंट की परमिशन ज्यादा नहीं लेनी पड़ेगी। तो मेरे ख्याल से इसका एक मिला जुला असर ये होगा कि जो एक साधारण आदमी है वो अपने बिजनेस चालू करने के बारे में सोच सकता है। एक हमने बात नहीं करी है स्किल डेवलपमेंट की, काफी फोकस रहा है बजट में स्किल डेवलपमेंट।
He's talked about integrating the sort of all the ministerial approaches as well.
जी जी जी।
स्किल डेवलपमेंट।
The biggest thing there in that particular topic is the fact that the world has stopped creating jobs. There is no way that anybody going forward will have an objective of creating jobs. The only way you can do it is to create entrepreneurs or to create self-empowered
पिछले
people.
साल तक भी हम सुनते हैं कि ग्रोथ तो है, लेकिन जॉबलेस ग्रोथ हो रही है।
बिल्कुल।
कि ग्रोथ तो नजर आ रही है।
हमारा पिछले 10 साल में जो ग्रोथ हुआ है, जॉबलेस ग्रोथ हुआ।
देखो, इसके अलावा जो हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल की बात है, हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल एंड स्पेशली उसको भी अफोर्डेबल बनाने की बात है। ये भी कहा पीएम मोदी ने कि 2022 तक जो है हिंदुस्तान में स्लम्स ही खत्म हो जाएंगे। हम जिस शहर में बैठे हुए हैं वहां तो एशिया का सबसे बड़ा स्लम जो है उसको रोमांटिसाइज भी हालांकि बहुत बार किया गया है। ये बताइए कि इस बजट में आपको ऐसी कौन सी चीजें नजर आई हैं जिसमें पहली बात तो हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल, ये एक बुनियादी बात, दूसरे अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल, और कितना प्रैक्टिकल ये नजर आ रहा है 2022 के आपको बहुत अचीवेबल लगता है?
एज फार एज द स्पीच इज कंसर्न्ड, ऐसा कुछ था नहीं जिससे हम लोग बोल सके कि हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल इज अचीवेबल। फाइन प्रिंट पर आना बाकी है, पढ़ना बाकी है। लेकिन जो पिछला बजट था और द वेरियस स्टेटमेंट्स दैट मिस्टर मोदी हैज बीन मेकिंग, the government seems to be committed towards creating affordable housing by in a way of increasing FDI in affordable housing space and all of that. And the second very big impact to affordable housing, or in fact buying houses by middle class, would be a decline in interest rates. So I think today's budget paves the way for Raghuram Rajan to in a way start cutting down interest rates, assuming that the government will take ownership of the supply side related issues which is contributing to inflation today.
अवृतिका जी, आप इसमें कुछ ऐड करना चाहेंगे? कैसे हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल बनेगा?
I'm not too sure on the interest rate side. I would like to disagree. I'm not too sure how this budget actually contributes. You have a higher fiscal deficit than was possibly, you have higher duties which would possibly stoke inflation. I don't know, though globally inflation is coming down. And I think the government borrowing, nobody has spoken about that, but if you look at the figures and if you add up the numbers, the government borrowing goes up significantly compared to the previous years. So I think if you add up all this, I'm not too sure if the budget really supports significantly. The budget
the economic survey already talked about, the budget creating the preconditions for an interest rate cut.
जी, दूसरी बात है बिजली को लेकर, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, इसके दो पार्ट्स हो सकते हैं। एक पार्ट जो आप देखना चाहते हैं, दूसरा जो मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ कि एक तो वो कंपनियां जो कि पावर सेक्टर की कंपनियां हैं, पावर एंड एनर्जी, उनके लिए किस तरह की खबर इस बजट में है। उसके बाद मैं आऊंगी कि आम लोगों जो रिसीविंग एंड पे है, जो आम लोग हैं, उनके लिए बिजली के क्या प्रोविजन है। पहले कंपनियों का जिक्र करते हैं।
You see, as of today in this, we think the land acquisition bill and all other steps that the government is taking, which may not be strictly part of this budget, that is helping the corporates for generating more power. Apart from the fact the government has themselves said that they will actually fix up and generate projects of 5 UMPP projects of 4,000 megawatt each. So I think that will increase the supply or the availability of power to the people in general. So although in this budget there is no direct help to those power generating companies permanently in the fine print that I can see.
और इसको इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के हिस्से के तौर पर देख सकते हैं।
Part of, obviously power is part of, very much part of the infrastructure, and after spending substantial amount of time in the infrastructure industry, I think this budget gives a lot of fillip to the infrastructure as a whole by committing money.
But do you see, I mean, are you sort of going by experience again? Any concerns on that front? I mean, UMPP as a concept again is not new. And the whole approach of the government trying to kind of kickstart a power project in the past has been met with failure for various reasons. What could be the lessons perhaps then?
कुडानकुलम को लेके भी announcement हुआ है कि दूसरा phase में enter होगा.
खत्म हो जाएगा.
I will tell you. I personally feel, allow me to go back to the same point of execution which we Indians as a whole could not do it last time. I think we have taken lessons from our experience so far, and this time we will be very careful about what price we quote in the UMPP, which should be reasonable.
Very good. That's the point I wanted to make.
The moment you make that, why did the UMPPs and all other power producers really fail?
Exactly.
Because they were absolutely unreasonable and ran after unrealistic price quotation in the previous UMPPs and power projects.
Correct.
And in fact, they wanted to grow big without looking at the profitability of this. I think the government should overhaul the entire power scenario by saying to the consumers as well as the producers, look here gentlemen, while we are here to supply you power, but you need to at least cover the cost of power and the minimum amount of profit on the investment that the producers make. So the power manufacturer, the power supplier has to be rewarded for the risk that they are taking, and the pricing has to be appropriate in each and every power supply to the common people. That is what we need to do.
बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि जो आम आदमी है भारत का, ऐसे भी बहुत सारे गांव हैं जहां अभी तक बिजली नहीं पहुंची, जिन्होंने आजाद भारत में अभी तक बिजली बल्ब उनके घर में जलता हुआ नहीं देखा है. इस सरकार में आपको ऐसी कौन सी इंटेंशन किस तरह से नजर आती है? खासकर बजट में पहला फुल फ्लेजेड बजट था जो कि एक पॉलिटिकल डॉक्यूमेंट भी है, सरकार का इंटेंशन भी पता चलता है कि वो क्या करना चाहती है. तीनों जो जरिए है हमारे पास बिजली उत्पादन के, चाहे वो न्यूक्लियर का हम जिक्र करें, सोलर का हम जिक्र करें या फिर हम कोल की हम बात करें, क्या इसमें प्रायोरिटी सरकार की क्या नजर आती है?
तीनों में बात छेड़ी है फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ने. ग्रिडलेस सोलर पावर की बात की गई है कि जहां जो हमारे विलेजेस जो ग्रिड से जुड़े नहीं हैं उनको कैसे पावर पहुंचाया जाए. तो वो ग्रिडलेस सोलर पावर, रूफटॉप सोलर पावर, स्मॉल सोलर पावर, स्मॉल हाइड्रो, इन सब की बात हुई है. कोल पे हमारे यहां कोल की क्षमता इतनी ज्यादा है और हम कुछ भी कर लें, पूरी दुनिया कुछ भी कर ले, 70% ऑफ पावर सप्लाई विल हैव टू कम फ्रॉम कोल.
लेकिन एनवायरमेंट का भी बहुत बड़ा खतरा है.
इसलिए उन्होंने जोर दिया है कि वो क्लीन कोल कैसे किया जाए, उस पे इन्वेस्टमेंट जाए.
क्योंकि इंटरनेशनल मंच पे जाके हम कुछ कहकर आते हैं, फिर यहाँ फिर कोयले से बिजली बनाते हैं.
भारत को एक आधुनिक भारत बनाने की चर्चा बराबर की जाती रही है, लेकिन भारत को एक आधुनिक भारत बनाने की दिशा में, गरीबी और बेरोजगारी से छुटकारा दिलाने की दिशा में जो प्रभावी कदम उठाए जाने चाहिए थे, इसके पहले कभी नहीं हुआ. और मैं कह सकता हूं कि यह बजट जो आज प्रस्तुत हुआ है यहाँ पर, उसकी जितनी भी सराहना की जाए वह कम है. और आधुनिक भारत के निर्माण में एक यह बहुत ही सकारात्मक और सार्थक पहल है.
मैं मोदी सरकार के पहले पूर्ण बजट को रोजगार लक्षी मानता हूं और गरीबों को सुरक्षा प्रदान करने वाला ये बजट है. इसलिए मैं वित्त मंत्री श्रीमान अरुण जेटली और देश के प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को बधाई देता हूं.
And it will accelerate the growth, and it will at the end will bring all-round development. Very innovative, very inspiring, and people will be very happy not only about the budget proposals but also the reforms in taxation and also the steps that are going to be taken to end the black money and taking care of the vulnerable sections, uplifting the poorest of the poor. These are the highlights of this budget.
Right, sorry, we were talking about black money and we lost the connection there somewhere. So, okay, so, you know, the finance minister spent a lot of time talking about black money. He outlined the efforts that the government had been putting in so far, and there's been a lot of run-up into this as well. he also talked about black money in the domestic front, which in some ways is more critical because it needs. So there's almost a package to deal with black money with severe and fairly stringent punishments and penalties. How do you read this?
I read it as follows. My end game is that people will be extraordinarily scared to generate and keep and maintain black assets or black money.
Even within the country.
The incentive to indulge in creating black money has been significantly reduced. There is no cost that people will be willing to pay if it means they're going to go to jail for 10 years or 3 times the property will be paid out in terms of taxes or that they will be prosecuted. Now the provisions are so significant that I think the complete incentive to even cheat one bit has been eliminated. I would love to see the bill. I would like to see how it gets implemented. I don't want it to become a draconian tax terrorism means, but I do see that if people read the fine print and take lessons from it, we will eliminate.
लेकिन कहा जा रहा है कि शायद बहुत प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है ये बात जिस तरह से उन्होंने प्रोसिक्यूट करने की बात कही है.
My view on this is very clear. I am overly enthused with this black money bill, and I will explain why. The thing is that this government, a lot of people, as you very rightly said, this government have been booed by a lot of people saying that what is happening on black money. To understand this, we need to understand the black money that has been accumulated over the last 60 years from 1947 till yesterday or before this government came in. It cannot be corrected within the 9 months. This government has to be given enough of time to do the necessary action, and I think this step has been the boldest step to check the black money. Not only it will bring in a lot of black money, those steps are taken, but I think it will have a very long-term effect on the economy. The prices will come down, the incentive to keep money outside will not be there because, as Shailesh very rightly said, nobody will risk going to jail by having some couple of $1 million.
प्रबल यहाँ पे हिंदुस्तान में बैठ के ये बातें करना ठीक है, लेकिन जब वो मनी पार्क की जाती है हिंदुस्तान के बाहर, और हम जानते हैं कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर भी इसको लेकर किस तरह की पूरी एक जंग छिड़ी हुई है. अमेरिका जाहिर है उसका जो अपना रुतबा है उसके हिसाब से वो कंपनियों को जो है वो पैसा उनके ऊपर फाइन कर सकता है, लेकिन क्या भारत ऐसा कर सकता है? भारत के पास वो मींस नहीं है, फिर कैसे हम वापस लाएंगे पैसा?
Let me tell you, once the legislation comes into force, you will find all these getting streamlined. What we need to
लेकिन
do,
इंडियन लॉज और इंटरनेशनल लॉज इनके बीच में फर्क तो समझना होगा.
No, फर्क तो है ही. But the question is that once the Indian law gets implemented, then you will find there is a clear disincentive to do anything illegal on the part of the Indians if they have been doing.
What about domestic, Prabal? How do you sense that? Because, I mean, there is a stipulation of any transaction more than 20,000 rupees for immovable will be monitored, but...
In my opinion, 20,000 limit is a little on the lower side. Because in today's scenario...
And how do you monitor?
It can be monitored because everywhere you have to give PAN card number.
Yeah.
And the moment the PAN card number is there...
My question is, I mean, it's a layman's question. For a transaction that's always been under the radar, how does it suddenly come about?
Let me tell you. The government view is like this, and this is the same with my view. If the black money is being generated for less than 20,000, I think government is saying we are not going to look into that because the money is too insignificant. But if somebody is doing big time black money which is going to impact the economy of the country, then it has to be in millions of dollars, or if it in India it has to be in crores of rupees. In crores of rupees you cannot do transactions of 20,000 rupees repeated till the time it becomes 100 crores.
It's carrot and stick, right? So on one hand you are saying all these laws, and there's been this experience in South Korea, for example, where you incentivize payments through the equivalent of RuPay. So if you go through a credit card, you get certain amount of discounts or cashbacks and stuff like that. So if you see, I think in the budget speech that has been spoken about. So that model has been a very successful model in certain other countries, where increasingly, see, the only way you can control ultimately black money is if 90% of your transactions, consumption transactions are happening through...
यानी दो तरीके हुए ब्लैक मनी को देखते हैं. एक तो भारत में ही कैसे उसको कंट्रोल किया जाए, जिसका जिक्र कर रहे थे गोविंद, और बाकी दूसरे ये कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जो नियम है उनके कायदे कानून के हिसाब से किस तरह से इसको किया जाए. मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का हम जिक्र करते हैं, उसमें खासकर मेक इन इंडिया की बात बार बार सुनाई दी है. उनका खुद का पैट प्रोजेक्ट है पीएम मोदी का. इसमें डिफेंस सेक्टर को लेकर आपकी किस तरह की उम्मीदें हैं? क्योंकि उसमें बार बार ये बताया जा रहा है कि भाई हम ठीक है दूसरे कंट्रीज से डील जरूर कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो इक्विपमेंट्स हैं हम वो भारत में बनाने की कोशिश करेंगे ताकि इसको इंडिजिनाइज किया जा सके और ज्यादा जॉब क्रिएशन हो. इसमें अनाउंसमेंट किस तरह का नजर आया आपको बजट में?
announcement. So let me just give you a backdrop as to the importance of Make in India for a country like India. तो इंडिया में अगर आप नया जीडीपी कैलकुलेशन के हिसाब से ब्रेकअप देखेंगे तो प्राइवेट per capita, for example, the PFC, which is final consumption expenditure, private, which is the money that we spend, that you and I spend on the streets, accounts for 69% of the overall GDP. So it's a huge money. और अगर Indian suppliers is not able to attend to the demand, then the demand will be catered to by foreign imports. So there will be a significant risk evolving in the current account balance situation or the external debt situation. So keeping that in mind, we definitely need to strengthen the Make in India, the manufacturing sector of the country, who can supply the requirements of the Indian population, because again India is a domestic demand driven economy. So that being the backdrop, the trust that is being given to Make in India, I don't think is sufficient, and it needs to be increased quite a few notches.
टेक्नोलॉजी का पार्ट जो सबसे ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण है कि किसी भी जो सौदे में सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है टेक्नोलॉजी का खरीदा जाना, वो टेक्नोलॉजी कैसे आएगी? अगर मेक इन इंडिया भी हम करते हैं, भारत में भी बनाते हैं, और इंडियन कंपनीज को भी अगर हम कहते हैं बनाने के लिए, तो टेक्नोलॉजी कैसे आएगी?
जी, if you go back to the concept of Swadeshi as a concept did not flourish in India because the quality of goods and services that were being produced and the price we were asking for it was not matching. So it was a lose-lose situation for the Indian consumers कि वो खराब चीज ज्यादा कीमत में क्यों खरीदे? So they will definitely go to international or the suppliers. So same is the issue with technology. Technology, if you look at the various institutions we have which are creating technology-based products in India, maybe they are good at creating bits and pieces of the technology which are then later on assembled to create a nice looking product with a nice user interface, etc. abroad. But by themselves they are not in a situation to create a end-to-end solution for business.
तो यानी आप ये कह रहे हैं कि कुछ हेल्प बाहर से ली जाएगी और कुछ भारत में बनाया जाएगा, क्योंकि अभी भी जो हम बनाते हैं यहाँ पर उसमें ज्यादातर असेंबलिंग का काम है जो भारत में होता है.
भारत में बिट्स एंड पीस वाइज काम होता है और जो असेंबलिंग होता है वो बाहर होता है, एंड देन दे ऐड अ नाइस लुकिंग इंटरफेस ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट, जैकेट ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट, जो वो उसको काफी ज्यादा यूजेबल बना देती है.
But how do you, I mean, you're a large manufacturing group again. How do you see the whole Make in India debate as it's progressed till date, which is of course the union budget?
You see, unfortunately, manufacturing in India is not growing as the data given by FM himself, that it has come down from 17% of GDP to 16%, which is a really, in my opinion, very, very concerning factor. And why is this? That's because no matter what you do, manufacturing sector creates the maximum employment. And we should give maximum emphasis on creating employment in this country if the economy has to have a demand push, so to say. In my opinion, there are a couple of reasons why the manufacturing is not happening much. First of all, obviously the global demand was actually at a lowest ebb for some time. Europe is almost, there is no demand that is happening. America, although it's the biggest consuming country, is not importing that much as it used to be. And in the Indian economy as a whole is actually creating all the demand that is happening in manufacturing. All said and done, the reason why the manufacturing growth is not happening, and we are possibly not looking at that, is there is a lot of idle capacity that is still lying in the Indian manufacturing sector, which has not been used up for the last 3, 4, 5 years because there was no global demand and there was no Indian demand. The Indian manufacturers, and very rightly so, would first like to fill up that idle capacity in the country, and then only they will go to invest further to create capacity.
Like, I mean,
in my opinion, I do not see the Indian manufacturing sector growing up once again in less than 1.5 to 2 years. If anything happens before that, I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Right.
Otherwise, I see that it is going to take that much
on the
time.
question we perhaps could have covered earlier also is that what's the, India's finally has a place in the world, right? Where do we stand with regard to the external sector? I mean, while we may want to grow as an economy, our fortunes also are dependent on a lot of external factors, some of which have already benefited us, like falling energy prices and commodity prices. But then there's also the problem of lower import demand from many countries, which is affecting our exports.
Yes, see, the entire emerging market concept especially the BRICS concept, is slowing down. So if you consider Brazil, there is a huge amount of economic slowdown there. There's rising inflation. If you consider China, China is slowing down. If you consider Russia, because of global oil, the slowdown in prices, as well as the clampdown of US because of the war activities Russia is involved in, and even South Africa, where corruption is nowadays a major issue. So investors are losing faith on most of the BRICS nations except India. So India is the only ray of hope, according to me, within the BRICS nation, which can propose a good amount return of investment to all these FIIs over the next.
ने बहुत बड़ा सवाल उठाया है, जरूर इस पर जरूर चर्चा करेंगे, दूसरे मेहमानों की राय लेंगे, लेकिन उससे पहले कुछ राजनीतिक प्रतिक्रियाएं हमारे सामने आ रही हैं, उनको सुन लेते हैं.
This is the first time in the history of the country the finance minister giving highest priority to the infrastructure. Our country needs good infrastructure, and the investment in infrastructure increases more employment potential. And for the ports, for the roads, and for the railway, the finance minister give additional budget for us, and this is a great.
हम इस बजट को जो है वो देश की प्रोग्रेस एंड प्रॉस्पेरिटी का गजट के रूप में देखते हैं. ये बजट ही नहीं है, बल्कि देश की समृद्धि और देश के विकास का गजट है. और जिस तरह से देश के गांव, गरीब, किसान, झुग्गी झोपड़ी के इंसान, महिला और नौजवान, हर समाज के हर वर्ग को प्रगति की मुख्य धारा में शामिल करने की कोशिश इस बजट के माध्यम से की गई है.
बहुत बढ़िया बजट, आम इंसान के हित का बजट. और जैसे पेंशनलेस सोसाइटी का एक नया विचार, कॉन्सेप्ट रखा है वित्त मंत्री जी ने, और साथ ही साथ जहां एक और एल्डर सिटीजन्स का ध्यान रखा गया, वहां दूसरी ओर इस बात का भी ध्यान रखा गया कि देश के 2/3 से अधिक जनसंख्या युवाओं की है, उसकी ओर भी ध्यान. काले धन को लेकर के जो नए प्रावधान लाने की घोषणा की गई है, वो भी एक बड़ा ही महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय है, महत्वपूर्ण घोषणा है.
मैं आभार व्यक्त करना चाहता हूं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का और माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी का, जिन्होंने बहुत ही सकारात्मक सोच के तहत बिहार को विशेष ध्यान दिया है और बिहार को विशेष पैकेज के समान ही राशि आवंटित किया गया है.
Keeping the fiscal deficit and the revenue deficit under control, which is very crucial to keep the inflation under control, and also a lot of things have been done on the infrastructure, which is lacking in our country. That's very welcome feature, I feel. So overall, we feel that budget is good and positive.
It is a very pragmatic budget. It is a budget that gives a lot of thrust to infrastructure, education, skilling India. I am particularly happy for the note that has been taken for women and the girl child. I am extremely grateful for allocation for new institutions for higher learning.
ये गरीबों की चिंता करता है, ये मजदूरों की चिंता करता है, ये वृद्धों की चिंता करता है, ये नौजवानों की चिंता करता है, और देश को विकास की दिशा में आगे ले जाने वाला बजट.
जिस तरह से बात कर रहे हैं जॉब क्रिएशन और जॉब क्रिएटर्स के लिए थोड़ा सा रिलैक्स किया है फिस्कल कंसोलिडेशन उन्होंने, और ये कमिटमेंट लग रहा है कि वो कैपिटल स्पेंडिंग की तरफ जाएगा. जितना फिस्कल डेफिसिट को एक्सपेंड किया उन्होंने, बार बार उन्होंने ये बात कही है अबाउट लेस गवर्नेंस, मतलब लेस गवर्नमेंट एंड मोर गवर्नेंस. उसका मेरे ख्याल में लॉन्ग टर्म इफेक्ट अच्छा रहेगा.
9 months time, they are not presented what they have done 9 months time. 9 months time. That was because 9 months time, at least this time this is a full budget. When it is a full budget for the entire term, they should reel out what they are going to. There should be some indication what they are going to do and what is their approach for another rest of the term.